I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, it's time to reject the lie that there would be any type of immigration enforcement under President Trump that Democrats would support. Plus, a new report says a non-binary teacher in the Tumwater School District went to the principal because she did not want to teach the student of a conservative school board member. And whites not welcome at a holiday musical in Seattle. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. Click on the banner that says support the show for $5. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. Jam-packed show for you today. I want to start by dispelling a myth. There is absolutely no form, fashion, reasonable time and manner of immigration enforcement that could be carried out under President Donald Trump that Democrats would accept. It's so important that we come to terms with that. It doesn't matter if Trump was only rounding up rapists. It doesn't matter if Trump was only rounding up murderers. It doesn't matter if ICE was politely knocking on people's door at a time reasonable with their schedule and asking them very nicely to come with them so they could be deported from the country. It doesn't matter what kind of immigration enforcement is happening under President Donald Trump. Democrats will still be opposed to it. And they'll still paint it as horrible, evil, awful, awful, awful. And we've had stories in recent days with ties to Washington State and the West Coast that prove that out entirely. And we have Democrats, they'll come out and they'll say, well, President Donald Trump promised that he was only going to go after the worst of the worst. And look what he's doing now. He's rounding up all sorts of people. But even when President Donald Trump and ICE go after the worst of the worst, we still have Democrats complain about it. We still have Democrats come to the defense of murderers and rapists and domestic abusers and thieves who are in the country illegally. And that tells you everything that you need to know, that there is no type of immigration enforcement President Donald Trump could engage in that they would be okay with. So that leads me to just sort of ignore everything they say. Because if you had reasonable Democrats who are coming out and saying, hey, I'm all for, rounding up people who came here and have an extensive criminal history or committed crimes, but I'm not okay with this certain segment, and they were very consistent in their messaging, I could work with that. I think it was not too long ago where I shared that perspective as well. Like, hey, yes, let's focus on the dangerous criminal law violators and then go from there. But they're totally inconsistent on everything related to immigration. So a couple examples. There was, and let me just play this video, a little context. There was a illegal alien named Wilmer Toledo Martinez who was taken into custody by ICE, and it did not go smoothly. Here's some video.
You need to back up. You need to back up.
I can be right here.
Or he's going to get bit again. Go.
But did you hit my car?
No. It's shy.
Back up. You can go inside now.
I'm not going to. I can be out here.
Stand here. Do you have any weapons? Any knives on you? Federal agents from Homeland Security. You understand that?
So you saw he's got a bunch of blood on him, and it's because the dog with Homeland Security had to help take him down because I said he resisted. And so that guy is now being held here in Washington State at the Northwest ICE Processing Center. Again, illegal alien Wilmer Toledo Martinez had to be taken down by a federal police canine. So before we get to the background of who this guy is, this is what Senator Patty Murray, the United States Senator representing Washington, had to say about it. My constituent, Wilmer, first of all, not your constituent. He's an illegal alien. Not your constituent unless you're trying to say that you want and don't care if people are here illegally, which that's never a position you've taken publicly. And unless you know that he voted or something, he's not your constituent. My constituent, Wilmer, was mauled by an ICE attack dog, despite the fact that he, as he consistently explained, was not resisting arrest or trying to flee. His wife and young children, all U.S. citizens, were forced to watch helplessly as Wilmer was violently attacked and dragged away. Okay, I don't think he was dragged away. He was put into a vehicle, and that part of it after the ICE dog, yes, had to get him into custody, was actually fairly calm. She said, I am calling for Wilmer's immediate release. Immediate release from the Northwest ICE Processing Center. He has no criminal convictions. He poses no threat to the community. And he urgently needs appropriate medical care since ICE is denying him the treatment he requires. Gosh, well, that's where I'm going to have a problem with what she's saying there, because he does have a criminal history and he does pose a risk to the community. And there is a good reason to keep him at the Northwest ICE Processing Center. So here's some criminal history for Wilmer Toledo Martinez out of Portland. I don't know, maybe she only looked at Washington State. I'm not sure where she fell short. Little information on him. He's been charged with dealing heroin, theft, unlawful possession of a firearm, possession of a loaded firearm. So these are the kind of people that Democrats just absolutely reactionary, Trump bad, this guy got hurt by an ICE dog or by an ICE dog. I don't care to know any other information. This guy's in the country illegally dealing heroin that kills people. He's in the country illegally, unlawfully possessing a firearm. I thought Democrats hated guns. And I really thought they hated guns in the hands of dangerous criminals. This is the kind of person that United States Senator Patty Murray is spending her time using her influence and power to try to make people feel bad for, to turn them against President Donald Trump. And that's why I say when they come out with this fake narrative that, oh, Trump promised us he was only going to get the worst of the worst, even when he goes after the worst of the worst, you still have a problem with it. Because there is no reasonable time, manner, or place where you would be okay with President Trump enforcing the nation's immigration laws. We saw this just last week with Katie Wilson, the new socialist mayor of Seattle. She comes out. When has she ever expressed sympathy for the victim of a crime? No, can't do that. But she'll express sympathy and use her power and influence to try to get the release of an illegal alien, Greggy Q.A.G. Sorio, saying he's been held for months at the Northwest Detention Center without proper medical care, despite his precarious physical condition. This is horrible. This guy is a domestic abuser. He's a burglar. He's a violent illegal alien. So they don't get to use the excuse that, oh, President Trump is also arresting people who have no criminal history here and who don't pose a danger to the community, because they don't even care when he arrests people or when they detain people who do pose a danger to the community, who do have a violent criminal history. I mean, hell, we always use the example of that Paco guy down in Olympia who people were raising money for on GoFundMe. Oh, he's just a farmer. He's a farmer. He's a small business owner. No, his name wasn't even Paco. It was Youssef. And he was a wanted murderer out of Mexico. So if they used nuance, if they used facts and reason, and they wanted to have a legitimate conversation about who should we be focusing these immigration efforts on, I would still mostly disagree with them, but I'd be willing to entertain those conversations. And the reason I say, and I've even come, and this is one of the reasons I think I continue to shift on this issue, is first of all, our state's sanctuary laws are one of the reasons why, while ICE is out and DHS is out trying to round up targets for enforcement, convicted pedophiles and rapists, convicted murderers, burglars, domestic abusers, people with 4 DUIs, they're out there trying to find them. Local officials make it more difficult because they've provided those individuals sanctuary. They release them from jails without allowing ICE to come get them there. And so then what happens? ICE is out in the community and they're like, oh, we're going to take you. We're going to take your wife too, because she's illegal as well. She might not have any criminal law violations besides coming into the country, but we're here. The locals in this sanctuary jurisdiction forced us to get a team together and to come out to find you. So we're going to take everyone with you as well. And Democrats won't acknowledge that their sanctuary policies are actually leading to more arrests in the community that otherwise wouldn't have taken place. So they're not interested in facts. I think that's very clear. And they don't care whether an illegal is here with a violent criminal history or whether it's someone who only came across the border, has done everything else, worked or whatever it is, and they're detained. There's no difference to them. They'll advocate for them nonetheless if they can paint Donald Trump as an evil maniac. And then the media feeds right into it as well. We talked about this on the show last week, this crazy story from the Seattle Times. probably 2,000 words in the headline of the article. An atmosphere of fear surrounds childcare after ICE detention. And it told this, harrowing tale, this long about how everyone involved in childcare in Washington state is fearful. And it made it sound like ICE is literally waiting outside your kid's daycare to find brown people and round them up. But of course, at the end of it, you had to read all the way to the end to find out in only one instance had a parent been detained by ICE on their way to a childcare facility. And in fact, ICE was so nice about it, they allowed her to continue to take her child to the childcare facility to make sure that she could make arrangements. And then they took her into custody and they deported her from the country. But even that will be used by Democrats to paint it as some sort of theme. Congresswoman Pamela Jayapal shared that Seattle Times story. Of course she did. ICE is kidnapping parents from outside of their children's daycare centers. This is not what going after the worst of the worst looks like. Trump is terrorizing families and traumatizing children. But again, and even she has defended and advocated for the worst of the worst. So she can use that line, this isn't what going after the worst of the worst looks like, but even when he does, you defend them too. And so that's why I'm like, you know what, Trump, balls to the walls. Balls to the walls. I just don't care anymore because there isn't any nuance being used. They obviously are perfectly fine advocating for violent, dangerous criminals to remain in the country, even though under Biden, under Obama, all of these activities were still taking place. They were detaining people here for being in the country illegally, even if they had no other law violations. They were going into communities. I did a ride-along. I've done multiple ride-alongs with ICE and with enforcement removal. And I did it during the Obama administration. I did it during the Biden administration. And I've done it during the Trump administration. So these activities, these laws have always existed, but it's because of President Donald Trump, and that's becoming painfully clear. And so I have a hard time, I guess. Like, I have sympathy, and this is where I really struggle, because I want to be undivided and have these reasonable opinions on everything, and I think I do, and I try very hard. But when you treat everyone the same when they're in the country illegally, whether they have a murder conviction, a rape conviction, whether they're a pedophile, or whether their only crime truly was coming into the country illegally, then I just have a hard time believing that you actually want to engage in a good faith debate on this issue and who really the country should be prioritizing for removal. And then you have people like Attorney General Nick Brown, now on his 45th lawsuit against the Trump administration in 10 months. 45 lawsuits in 10 months. We talked about this previously because he was teeing up that he was going to introduce something called the Immigrant Worker Protection Act. He now officially has. I have some sound from a press conference I'm going to play momentarily. But their press release from the Attorney General's office, Washington Attorney General Nick Brown has teamed up with Senator Rebecca Saldana and Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self to propose the Immigrant Workers Protection Act. The proposed legislation would require employers notify employees when the federal government has requested their employment eligibility information. So basically, employers will be required to help people try to avoid lawful immigration efforts. It says it would remind employees that they are not required to give federal immigration officials access to their non-public places of business. Make sure employers follow the law and only share employees' personal data when a subpoena or a judicial warrant has been issued. And so they basically want to require businesses by law to interfere with ICE. That's what they want. That if you own a business in Washington state, I mean, I think the people who watch this show who own a business, you're probably not employing illegals. Or maybe somebody had false documents and you are and you don't even know. But they're going to require that you impede. It'll be the law of Washington state for you to impede lawful immigration enforcement. So Nick Brown had this press conference, talked about why the state needs this.
When workers live in fear, when workers are scared that ICE will show up at their job at any moment to take anyone that looks like an immigrant,
God,
they're less likely to speak out against wage theft or other abuses against the workforce. And I see this bill as a way to level the playing field against that backdrop of intimidation under this administration.
So obviously a lie, that they're going to come and take anyone who just looks like an immigrant. No, they have the right. The federal government has the right to go to any work site in America and request the documentation to ensure that individuals are in the U.S. legally. So he's just spreading fear. He also says, and this is rich, that this bill will help Washington businesses continue to thrive.
The determination of everyone who is here with us today will ensure that our state remains a place where workers and business owners can thrive.
In order for it to remain a place where workers and business owners can thrive, it would have to be a place where workers and business owners are thriving. And that it is obviously not. But are you suggesting that the only way that our business environment can thrive is if they're allowed to, without repercussion, employ illegal aliens? And you're the state's chief law enforcer? Those two things seem to be in conflict with one another. You want to interfere with the federal government and federal authorities and their right to carry out lawful immigration efforts, and you're the state's chief law enforcer. Is that even legal? How can you do that job? It makes no sense. State Senator Rebecca Saldana, a Democrat who represents Seattle, really, I would say socialist light. She spoke at this press conference, and go ahead.
Because it's not just the workers that are afraid. It's the employers that are afraid. It's our restaurant owners and our car dealerships.
Why?
And the auto repair shop. It is about our grocery stores.
Interesting.
It is about our schools, where there is a lack of clarity about what are their rights and what are their responsibilities, because their workers are their neighbors. They're their friends. They are the ones that they go to the soccer games with.
Gee, what would they be afraid of? ICE, if you're watching, she just gave you a full list of types of businesses that she's acknowledging you will probably find some illegal aliens at. Auto repair shops, used car dealerships, grocery stores. What are they afraid of? That is the key question. And then she tried to make this about, oh, this is really sad. Which I will say, it's always sad when kids get wrapped up in this, right? When you're a young kid, maybe your parent came here illegally or they brought you here illegally or whatever it is, I never blame the kids. But at the end of the day, if their parent gets scooped up or they're deported with their family, that's not the federal government's fault. That's the fault of their parents for putting them in that situation.
My kids were afraid. They were afraid that their classmates were going to be sent back to countries they never knew. We had children asking, is there Chuck E. Cheese in Somalia? Because that's where they go when they celebrate their Eid.
Okay. I'm sorry, but wanting to go to Chuck E. Cheese, it does not grant you citizenship to the United States. And yes, that's a cool. And do people still go to Chuck E. Cheese? I thought we've all decided it's pretty creepy. It's pretty creepy. But that aside, I'm sure the kids from Somalia love Chuck E. Cheese. But, you know, they could enjoy Chuck E. Cheese if their parents came here legally. They could enjoy Chuck E. Cheese and even better places, or amusement parks and all these cool things, if their parents came here legally. Just because a kid wants to go to Chuck E. Cheese doesn't mean that they get granted citizenship to the United States. So I just refuse to fall into this trap of sympathy because, oh my gosh, you know, this mom was just trying to bring her child to daycare. Okay, well, she's illegal. Like, what do you want me to do about that? Oh, the kid just wants to go to Chuck E. Cheese. Okay, but their parent brought them into the country illegally. Like, sorry, I'm not going to feel bad about that situation. And of course, we have this whole other array of consequences for being a sanctuary state and, frankly, being a neighbor to multiple other sanctuary states. You know, we've had this string of big rig incidents and crashes involving people who either improperly were issued a CDL or who are in the country illegally and don't even have a CDL. Did you hear about this crazy crash on I-5? The details of this are astonishing. This happened Thursday in Lacey. So an unlicensed driver, this is the headline from Cairo Radio, an unlicensed driver was arrested after a car carrier nearly flips on I-5, sending 3 to the hospitals. There's this big pileup caused by this truck driver who is carrying vehicles. Well, homeboy is from Mexico doesn't even have a license to drive a big rig, was working for a California company. It says the driver has been identified as 40-year-old Juan Hernandez Santos of Mexico. The truck hit several cars, including the school bus. Fortunately, the driver of the school bus didn't have any kids on board. 3 people were sent to the hospital. Troopers from the Commercial Vehicles Division were brought in, and it quickly became clear that the driver should not have been behind the wheel. The driver of the semi did not possess a valid commercial driver's license from out of the country or within the United States. So he didn't even have like some sort of, commensurate driver's license from Mexico. Nothing. The driver didn't have insurance either. Wow, shocking. Hernandez Santos was arrested and taken to the Thurston County Jail. He's still listed on the roster there. He was arrested on suspicion of driving without a commercial license, which is a gross misdemeanor, but the charge listed this morning is driving while license suspended, which comes with an automatic 10 days in jail if convicted. But again, so you've got this guy, and this is because of California. He's working for a California company. How can you be employed to drive a big rig? We already know the issue. One of the issues in California, similar to Washington State, is they were issuing CDLs, but weren't following some of the federal requirements in order to get a CDL. This guy didn't even have a CDL. How the hell can you drive for a company, a big rig, and not even have a commercial driver's license, let alone the fact that you're in the country, you're a Mexican national, you're not even a U.S. citizen. And then, of course, you don't have any insurance. Well, I'm hoping that the company has some sort of insurance, because these individuals who were injured in this accident should sue them into oblivion. We now know, of course, and we've reached out to Department of Homeland Security, that this guy is on their radar. But what is going to happen in this situation? What is going to happen in this situation? So you've got a Mexican national. He's sitting in the Thurston County Jail. So ICE is going to want him, right? Well, the Thurston County Jail is prohibited by state law from trying to coordinate with ICE to let them know, hey, he's scheduled for release at this time. We can't hold him indefinitely on a gross misdemeanor, but you can come to the jail and get him and then, do what you need to do. No, they're not going to do that. So this guy will probably at some point walk out of the Thurston County Jail, and then he'll probably drive back to California, probably hit other people on the highway on the way. Because our state sanctuary laws protect everyone in the country illegally, no matter their level of criminal wrongdoing. And Democrats are perfectly fine with that. So spare me your, Trump promised he'd focus on the worst of the worst, because you also defend the worst of the worst. Wild. Speaking of wild, this next story from our friend Alicia Perkins with OSD Rescue is really hard to wrap our minds around. A non-binary school teacher in the Tumwater School District allegedly complained to the school because she did not want to teach the 10-year-old child of a conservative school board member. Think about that. We'll talk about the details of that story coming up. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Why? It just takes a lot of stress off your plate. If you've ever had to deal with insurance on your own, try to figure out, what do I need? Am I paying for something I don't need? Why do all of that when a company like First Mark can do it for you for free? And then they can save you a bunch of money. They saved Undivided viewer Christine $10,000 a year. And she thought she was screwed because her carrier was dissolving. She's like, you got 30 days to find new insurance. She has 2 businesses, was adding a 3rd vehicle to her policy, obviously her homeowner's policy. She's like, I'm absolutely screwed. And she's like, wait a second. What does Brandi keep reminding me to do? Oh, yes, take the First Mark Challenge. So she did it. And they're like, great news. We can cover all that. We can save you $10,000 a year. You know what? What can I say? There's a reason why I keep reminding you. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance companies. So they always have your best interest in mind. All right, this story takes us to the Tumwater School District. And the Tumwater School District has really become kind of central to the debate happening in Washington State over protecting girls' sports. So, of course, Frances Stout, who's now a junior, I think, at Tumwater High School, she was on our show, was one of the first female athletes in the state to really start to speak out about having to compete against biological boys. We had her on the show. Remember, she had to sit out her final she chose to sit out her final basketball game of the year because there was a biological boy playing on the other team. And so that really thrust this issue and the Tumwater School District into the national spotlight. I mean, Frances has now been very vocal in supporting the 2 Let's Go Washington initiatives. She's been on Fox News, some other national outlets, kind of pleading her case for why, she's hoping that leaders in our state do the right thing and protect girls' sports. So after Frances came out and told her story, you'll recall about this time last year, there was conversation about the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association presenting 2 amendments to their members to vote on. And the amendments would basically keep boys out of girls' sports. One of them would have said only biological girls can participate in girls' sports. The other one said it would create a 3rd category for, gender diverse individuals to compete in. And so for a few months, they were planning on having these votes, which we thought was great news. But then the state came out and basically told the WIAA, you're not taking a vote on that. You're not going to do that. So the WIAA had votes, but they were just symbolic. They didn't really mean anything. So some more sane school boards decided to take symbolic votes of their own. And one of them, you recall, was the Tumwater School Board. And they voted earlier this year, symbolically, that they don't want boys participating in girls' sports. Now, that doesn't mean anything, right? Boys, it's a state thing, right? But they wanted it on the record. At least it was like 3-2. So the 3 sane members wanted it on the record that they don't want boys competing against girls. So the makeup of the Tumwater School Board right now, it's interesting and important to point out. So, of course, the November election just happened. So now you have new school board members as of December 1st who started to take over. But the makeup of the school board is still the same. You have 3 individuals on the board who support protecting girls. They're on the record. They're sane. And then you have 2 that don't. And it's also interesting to point out that the 3 who support protecting girls are the men. And the 2 who don't support protecting girls are the women. Like, shame on you as women. Absolutely shame on you as women. That is just genuinely disturbing. So I want you to, there's a guy on the board right now who has actually just elected president of the board. We'll get to it in a moment. His name's Casey Taylor. So all of that background is important in understanding Alicia Perkins' latest story. She covers education. She has a Substack called OSD Rescue. The headline is this: non-binary teacher cites personal safety concerns to avoid director's child, sparking legal action. Okay, let's read into this. So the story gets into that background that I just discussed, that you had these school board members, including this one member, Casey Taylor, who voted to protect girls' sports. Well, a non-binary teacher who goes by, I think, they, them, in the, or Miss MX instead of Miss, whatever, in the Tumwater School Board didn't like that. And the board member has a child that was going to be in her 5th grade class, or him, they, them's 5th grade class. So this is what Alicia wrote. By late spring, the conflict took a deeply personal turn for director Casey Taylor. According to his wife, she had allegedly been told by their son's principal that a 5th grade teacher did not want to have Taylor's son placed in their class for the next year. Disturbed by what the Taylors viewed as blatant discrimination of their 10-year-old son, they withdrew him from Tumwater schools entirely for his well-being. In August, Casey Taylor filed a formal misconduct complaint against the teacher. TJ Thornton, who goes by MX instead of Mr. or Miss, claims non-binary identity status and uses they-them pronouns. The district hired an outside firm to investigate the complaint. During the investigation, it was revealed that, in fact, yes, Thornton did indeed go to the principal with concerns about having Casey Taylor's son in their class, citing fear for their personal safety. Okay, wow. Wrap your mind around this for a second. You've got a school board director, takes a pretty non-controversial symbolic vote, I don't want boys and girls sports. So a 5th grade teacher who goes by they, them, says they're non-binary, says, well, I don't want that school board director's son in my class. I'm worried about my personal safety. Worried about what, a 10-year-old? How disgusting is that? And this isn't just, you don't have to just take Alicia's word for it or the school board director or their family. Alicia Perkins has read the investigatory report. According to the investigators' September 24th, 2025 report, quote, Mix Thornton told me they had talked to the principal about their concern regarding their safety with the placement of students with parents who do not support people who are non-binary. Wow. Their concern was that Mr. Taylor may have some transphobia because he did not support transgender athletes. They also said they had requested a meeting with the principal to discuss developing a policy or practice to help mitigate the placement of students in their class who come from families that do not support LGBTQIA plus identities. They stated that their request was centered on their safety and an effort to prevent future harassment. Holy shit. Holy shit. That is insane. So this is an investigator saying a non-binary they-them teacher, 5th grade teacher, went to the principal to say, I want there to be a policy in place that I don't have to teach kids whose parents are anti-alphabet mob. So basically, I would say that's any conservative or moderate family, because most conservative and moderate families don't believe in the trans nonsense that's being pushed and believe that, yeah, boys shouldn't compete against girls. So this teacher, how can you keep your job after that? How can you keep your job after that? After basically saying, I don't want to teach the kids of parents whose politics I disagree with. How can you keep your job after that? How could any parent? What should parents think of that who have a child in mixed Thornton's class? I would pull my child out immediately. I would, because it's very clear that teacher is going to have this inherent dislike or hatred for my child because of my political beliefs. Wow. This is one of the most stunning things I've ever read when it comes to this insane radical gender thing in schools. How can they have a job? So any sane parent, what would you have done as any sane parent? Of course, this family, the Taylors, initially pulled their kid out because they didn't know how to react. But I mean, he's a member of the school board. And this is happening to him and he pulls his kid out. He's like, what do I do? Do I have to really pay for private school? So he's filed a tort claim against the district. And that's the only route, right? You filed an official complaint against the teacher. Nothing happened, even though the teacher admits, yes, I did this. So he's like, okay, I guess I have to file a claim against the district. So he filed the claim on November 30th, just a little over a week ago. Also filed new formal complaints with HR and the superintendent, this time naming both the district and the teacher. The complaint alleges a variety of things, but in part discrimination against the student on the basis of familial status and perceived political ideology, improper influence of elementary class placement process for personal gain, etc., 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 etc. I mean, to me, even though he's a school board member, what else is he supposed to do? He's also a dad. He's a dad whose child is being punished because he supports not having boys playing girl sports. He's a dad whose child is being punished because of his politics and his political beliefs, which are very reasonable, I might add. So this gets even crazier. So I mentioned the makeup of the current Tumwater School Board. So it's got the 3 sane people, including that guy, Casey Taylor. 3, thank you, men, for being the sane ones on the school board. And then it's got the 2 women who are, radical gender ideology, don't want to protect girls from boys in their spaces. So this week, first school board meeting back since the elections. So they have to elect a new school board president. So the 3 sane people want Casey Taylor to be the school board president. So the nomination process happens, and watch what unfolds. Now, we can have a conversation about what do you do in a situation like this? You have a school board member who's suing or has a claim, which is the precursor to a lawsuit, the school district that he represents on the board. I'm fine having a conversation about that. But you tell me what other recourse there is for him in a situation as insane as this. He's a school board member, but he's also a father. And he has a right as a father to push back against his child being punished for his political beliefs. So these 2 cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs women on the school board are now using this horrible situation affecting his fifth grader as a reason to try to block his appointment as the school board president. Thankfully, as you'll hear here, it didn't work. Good. Because he's sane. And I have to go back to, Nicole, can you go back to the graphic 3 from Alicia's story? I have to read this again because we need to understand how crazy this is. This is according to the investigators' report about what they found when they looked into this. And keep in mind, nothing came of this for the teacher. The teacher was able to do all of this without repercussions. It says, MX Thornton told me they talked to the principal about their concern regarding their safety with the placement of students with parents who do not support people who are non-binary. The concern was that the father may have had some transphobia because he didn't support transgender athletes. Mix Thornton also said they had requested a meeting with the principal to discuss developing a policy or practice to help mitigate the placement of students in their class who come from families that don't support LGBTQIA+ identities. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. How can that person be a public school teacher? How can that kid? Only radical people who are gender diverse can get away with something like that. Oh, it's about my safety. This is about my safety. That is so crazy. I mean, absolutely, as a parent, I would sue. Absolutely, as a parent, I would sue. This is a wild situation, and the school district has some explaining to do for how that individual is still teaching in a classroom today. And for any parents who have that teacher who didn't know this was happening, well, now you do. And the question is, what is your response going to be? You have a teacher teaching your fifth grader who is on the record saying that they don't believe for their safety they should have to teach kids whose parents have different politics than them. If you haven't written a letter to the district, you do it today. You write a letter to the principal, you write a letter to the teacher, and you demand that there is some sort of action there. That is completely inappropriate, obviously illegal, and completely batshit crazy. All right. This story is also crazy. But first, our friends at Rental Housing Association of Washington, rhawa.org, rhawa.org are the people you need on your side if you are a small to mid-sized landlord in the state of Washington. Especially right now, they're ready to go down to Olympia to go to bat for you. Make sure that they're not pushing any sort of insane, maybe expansions on rent control. So they're going to be your eyes and ears in Olympia, your advocates in Olympia, but also they're your advocates every single day. If you're trying to navigate the complex world of rules and regulations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you just are confused by the paperwork and what you need to have in order, they can help you every step of the way. You just got to become a member of RHA, rhawa.org, rhawa.org, empowering housing providers. All right, so we know that the citizens of Seattle have never met a tax that they didn't like. And one of the areas where they've been more than willing to increase their own taxes in recent years is for parks, is to say, hey, we live in a beautiful city, has a lot of cool parks and playgrounds, and yes, we want to make sure that those parks can be kept up, that they can be beautiful places for kids and the public to be able to enjoy. So they've raised taxes, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to take care of public parks in Seattle. Yet they are still falling into disrepair, and the Parks Department is charging, in one instance, a Little League 6 figures to play baseball in those parks. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. So I saw this from my friend Jason Rance. He sent it to me this morning. I thought, oh my gosh, I had a different plan for this segment today. I was like, we got to do this because this is government at its worst. This is government at its worst, and it's shocking to me that so few voters will pick up on it. And you can apply this to a bunch of different areas. Education, homelessness, in this case, parks. It's like the more money they spend, the more of your money they get, the worse the situation becomes. So they're spending more money than ever upkeeping public parks. Yet what happens? Well, the parks still become homeless and drug dens. They fall into disrepair. And it's like, where the hell is all that money going? And then, even though you're paying millions of dollars in taxes toward that issue, you still have to turn around and pay if you want to use the park. So this is the headline. Seattle charges Little League $120,000 for a permit to use fields that are in absolute complete disrepair. Let's just start with the figure. What do you mean? They're charging the Seattle Little League organization $120,000 to use ball fields. I mean, maybe a little tiny fee is fine to make sure you don't go in there and ruin the place. But is that not what the taxes pay for? What the hell are the taxes paying for if you're going to charge people who want to use the ball fields $120,000 for permits? So that's one issue. But then you're charging them six figures and the ball fields look like shit. So what are they paying for exactly? According to Jason Rand's Northeast Seattle Little League. So, by the way, it's not even the citywide like Little League. No, this is just for Northeast Seattle. $120,000. Northeast Seattle Little League Vice President Ted Foster detailed years of ignored maintenance requests, rapidly rising costs, and conditions so poor a child was nearly injured to the Jason Rand show in an interview he did. Seattle Parks, meanwhile, says the league should simply reach out, except the league has reached out. Foster explained that the league is a complete volunteer organization that just had to raise all family fees because city-imposed permit costs, quote, have doubled year after year the last 2 years. He said the league faces a, quote, 50% increase and then another 50% increase. And now permits alone make up more than 60% of their league's entire budget. Despite a massive six-figure financial commitment, he said the league gets almost nothing in return. He said, quote, we have no support. We have no field maintenance. We have really nobody within the city listening to our request to repair fences, fields, mow fields, fix water drainage issues. So first of all, that cost is, I can't even get my mind around that. Just for one Northeast Seattle Little League, $120,000 for a season. And then the city doesn't even respond to their requests. Hey, field, we got an issue with this field maintenance, water drainage issue, water's piling up everywhere. You get $120,000. It's increased exponentially over the last 2 years. They can barely get anyone at the city to answer their phone call. And that's, again, on top of the fact that we're already paying, in Seattle, astronomical taxes to upkeep those very parks. This is mind-boggling. It says the city's failures have also created real safety threats for young athletes. Foster recounted how his own son nearly suffered a serious injury due to a hole dug up by a dog that was in left field. Something the league doesn't have the staff or time to scour for. He said a slight misstep could mean a broken leg or knee ligament damage, something that could so easily be corrected if there was just a little bit of help from the city. And frankly, there should be a lot of bit of help from the city, given how much tax money they're getting, given how much money now I had no clue that they were charging people for permits to use public playfields. Those playfields should be pristine. And of course, the safety issues go even further than, a hole that a dog dug up. We've done stories on parks that there's druggies. The drug dealers are going down, shootings. They're doing needles all over the place. It feels like there's a story about that every week. Goes on to say, instead, he says the league is being forced to pay more than $120,000 this year for, quote, fields that are in absolute complete disrepair. Parents routinely show up after work, quote, with a wheelbarrow and a shovel and quick dry to get fields in playable condition for their kids. Who the hell are those parents voting for is what I want to know. Because I don't feel bad for you if you're electing the people who continue to charge you more taxes and then you have to pay into a $120,000 permit fee. And then you have to go out there with your own wheelbarrow and try to make sure the place is in good condition for your child to play there. When is enough enough? Seattle Parks, in a statement, said, we are sorry to hear about the challenges this league has been experiencing and encourage them to reach out to talk to our staff directly. But of course, Foster said they do that all the time and they don't get responses. And if they do get responses, they're promised something that is never delivered. It says still the department defended its work, saying field maintenance of grass fields can be challenging in a rainy city like Seattle, pointing to heavy infield maintenance done in September. The Parks Department also noted that fee increases brought Seattle's fees more in line with market rates, and that revenue collected supports recreation programs, park maintenance, and staffing. Where do the taxes go to? Where do the taxes go to? For parks that you specifically asked for an increase in the levy, where do the taxes go to? I have enough of a problem with that if there weren't any fees to use the spaces. I have enough of a problem with the fact that people are giving you an astronomical amount of their hard-earned money in taxes, specifically to maintain the parks, and they look horrible. Now I find out that in addition to the tax revenue, you're also charging people who use the park so you can use that money for maintenance, and they're still not being maintained? Government. This is government. The government bureaucracy, an absolute failure. Wow, I had no idea. Maybe I'm dumb because I don't have kids or something, but I had no idea that you had to pay a fee that big for a permit to use a public park. A little one, fine. Like, hey, we're having a tournament out there. Maybe you need some extra staff or something like that. Fine. $120,000 on top of all the taxes. Insane. I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll on Patreon, Locals, and X, should kids' sports teams pay a fee to play at public parks? Should they pay a fee at all? My answer is no. That's what taxes are for. Nicole, you're on softball teams. You're not a child, but...
Yeah, normally I think, well, we do pay a fee, but a lot of times that's for the umps, right? So I think we do pay a field fee as well, but I think that's to reserve it. So it makes sense to say, hey, fine. Here's a reservation fee because you want to make sure that you have the field when you schedule a game. But for sure, that is over the top fee.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. I don't care how many games you're having.
And it has made sports out of reach for a lot of families because I know I had a cousin that just had a kid play. They couldn't get enough kids to play football because it was $500 for 11-year-olds to play football. Right. So they decreased it to $45 to get enough kids to play a game.
Well, and as he said there, they have to pass that cost along to families for their kids to participate. So they want to talk about, equal opportunities and stuff.
Right.
Who do you think that hurts? The poor kids.
Yes.
The poor families. God, these people drive me absolutely bonkers.
They're just stupid.
How is this acceptable?
It's stupid. Oh my
gosh, crazy. So on Patreon, Locals, and X, 70% of you are saying no. Kids sports teams shouldn't pay a fee. And I do think there should be a difference. Is it a kids sports?
Then, like a rec league.
Adults, fine. Charge them a fee to come in. But kids, come on. Isn't this what we want? Kids playing sports, not out gangbanging on the streets or, stuck in their phones. E says public park open to all the public. National and state parks used to be free too, and are still in most states unless they start giving the taxpayers a refund, then no. Samantha says, yes, they should generate revenue to help with programs and field upkeep and offset the cost to the taxpayers, but that's the issue. It's clearly not offset. They're increasing cost to taxpayers and they're charging more for fees. So it's clearly not at all offsetting. Yeah, if you were going to charge people and then taxes were lower, I totally agree. But that's not what's happening here. Sunny days, we already pay for parks. Maybe charge a deposit at the beginning of the season to cover possible damages, but refund it to the leagues 100%. That seems reasonable to me. Says, let's keep kids' activities accessible, not use them as profiteering for cities that can't maintain their budgets. 100%. Bob said, if the parks are funded by the taxpayers, then no. If private parks, then yes. Yeah, totally different situation. Let's see here. Randall, at multiple use community fields, if a league or organization wants exclusive use on weekends or evenings, then they must pay a fee. Otherwise, they should be like everyone else and use the fields on a first-come, first-served basis. I understand that too, like Nicole said. Maybe a fee to reserve because then you're taking that field out of rotation for the public to be able to use it. So a little bit of a fee might be appropriate. But I think we all agree $120,000 for a Little League organization is absolutely ridiculous, especially if those fields aren't being maintained. Matthew says, I voted yes. However, there should be maintenance and improvements supported by that fee. The Parks Department should be able to show what the money is being used for. But of course, they're not able to show that because the money is going to what? Government bureaucracy. That's where a big chunk of the money always goes. We would be much better keeping that tax money in the hands of the community and helping to fund the little leagues to be able to hire someone. Like, let the public do it. Hire someone to maintain the parks in your community with that money instead of giving it to the government, and I promise you those parks would be pristine. That segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. Coming up next in our segment, Unbelievable, if you want to take in a holiday musical in Seattle, well, you can, as long as you're not white. Yes, we're doing this again. Even after we pointed it out last year, we're doing this again. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. Elizabeth W. did. She gave him 5 stars. They helped her sell her condo. She said the experience was absolutely fantastic. She said they gave recommendations on suggested improvements. I was able to pick and choose what I wanted to get done based on my budget. They coordinated everything with the contractor, including receiving and setting up new appliances. They also offered her staging, but gave her a realistic expectation about, here's what you might get back if the home is staged. Here's how much it could increase your selling price. So she opted instead to do virtual staging, which ended up amazing. So she was really happy with that as well. So if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones. Ask him for a free market analysis so you can understand how the market is shaping up for 2026. Sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It really just is a better way to sell your home. All right, if you're thinking about taking in Elf the Musical in downtown Seattle this holiday season, make sure you don't go on the night where no whites are allowed. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Boop. Okay, we got an email from an Undivided viewer, Maggie, told us this. I saw an advertisement for Elf at the Fifth Avenue Theater and wanted to buy tickets. The day I could go, December 10th, which was the day before her son's birthday, I was not allowed. She said apparently it is Global Majority Day. The website actually says this. Only blacks or people of color can come and enjoy that specific show together. She said, I would love your thoughts on this because this is outright hate speech. So we talked about this last year. The Fifth Avenue Theater did this Global Majority Night last year where literally no whites are allowed. I don't know how they can get away with it. It's absolutely wild. So yes, Elf the Musical, which I love Elf. I've watched the movie a million times. I would love to go to Elf the Musical, but I refuse to go to the Fifth Avenue Theater because they do nonsense like this. So Elf is playing through December 28th, but if you want to go to the December 10th show, specifically, that is Global Majority Night. And they have all sorts of, they have a Pride Night. Okay.
But at least if you're an ally, you can also go.
Right, you can go if you're an ally. I think technically they wouldn't be able to prohibit a white person from walking in. And that's kind of what they told us last year when we reached out about this. Allies of the black community could go. But you really think a white person is going to buy a ticket for that? No, of course not. Because then they're going to feel totally awkward. Like, oh my gosh, everybody's probably looking at me because I'm white and I'm not supposed to be here tonight. So yeah, December 10th, Global Majority Night. Global Majority Nights invite black, indigenous, and communities of color to experience shows together. Without those pesky white people around. We hope these evenings of theater will be ones where self-identifying members of the community can come together to enjoy storytelling and engage with the performance. What is the reason? So basically, this reminds me of these youth groups that they had in the Olympia School District where it was no white kids because they said that it created a safe environment for kids of color to get together. So basically, white people are dangerous and black people should be able to go to the theater and enjoy a show without a white person sitting next to them. It's crazy. I mean, how can you justify that in 2025 in America?
And especially for a kid's show.
For a kid's show. Literally saying, oh, little Johnny, I'd love to take you to Elf the Musical, but you're white. And I'm sorry, whiteies cannot be there along with the black kids. It's just absolutely, it's one of the most insane things. And I would encourage you, and Nicole, I'm going to shame you for this. I know you go to the Fifth Avenue Theater. You love a good show.
So actually the Paramount is very good to us, but I usually go to the Paramount. So.
But have you been to the Fifth Avenue Theater since last year?
No, I haven't been to the Paramount.
Then I won't shame you.
I haven't been to the Fifth in years. But
don't go to the Fifth Avenue Theater.
I mean, we do have some very good people, I'm sure, that are affiliated with that, but that support us. But I don't agree with this.
We called them out last year about this.
I know.
That is absolutely insane. The Paramount's different. They're not owned by the same people, are they? Or are they?
No, they're typically a different group. Sometimes I think the theater group all kind of mixes, but no,
that's crazy.
This is crazy.
That's crazy. And only I had to include this in this because there was a story over the weekend in Campus Reform about Kent State University and this Capella group.
Yep.
It says Kent State a cappella group bans white students from solo auditions. I was like, what? The Kent State Vocal Intensity a cappella group restricted certain solos strictly to people of color over cultural appropriation concerns. Emails show Kent State student was disciplined after opposing the race-based solo policy. Mark Phillips, a 3-year member of the a cappella group's beatboxer, contacted a board member to inquire about how the exclusion of white students aligned with Kent State's anti-discrimination policies. Phillips suggested the limitations seemed at odds with equal opportunity in his message to the executive board. He said, I fully respect concerns about authenticity, but I also believe that whoever gives the strongest performance should be given the chance, he wrote. Art, music, and culture are meant to be shared and celebrated, not gatekept. In response, the board accused him of violating the university's anti-discrimination policy, placed him on probation, and scheduled a disciplinary hearing requiring him to plead his case before the entire group. So basically they're saying the beatboxers have to be black, is my understanding of the situation. Because of beatboxing, it's a black thing. And you'll be culturally appropriating if you, as a white person, even audition for the solo beatboxing role. And he pointed out how that seems weird, and he got in trouble for it. So things might seem like they're on the upswing in America, but as long as we still have no whites allowed night at Elf the Musical in Seattle, and as long as universities who get taxpayer funds are saying white people, or hell, black people, I don't know, let's say it was a soloist for folk music. I don't know, what's a really white thing? Soloist for a country music song. And they said, no black people, same issue. But that's not happening. Because it's only okay to discriminate against whites in 2025 in America. Unbelievable. All right, coming up next, I have some interesting, weird stuff that's happening in our state, or not happening in one instance, that I've got to talk to you guys about, because I have some thoughts going on in my head. We'll get to national news first. Valentine Roofing, our wonderful sponsors, have just been awarded the best roofing company in the Pacific Northwest for a 3rd year in a row. Count them. 1, 2, 3. And they do way more than just roofing. Right now, they can do custom holiday lighting, which I think is an awesome thing to get done, so you don't have to bother with it yourself, and you know it'll come out just perfect. They also do, in fact, they're coming over. Mike and I are getting our gutters cleaned out because they're just jam-packed with leaves right now. So they do gutter cleaning and installation, attic insulation, even exterior cleaning, or if you do need a new roof, of course, that's what they specialize in. So if your roof can be repaired, the important thing is they're going to repair it. They're not going to push you into buying a new roof unless you absolutely need one. And if you do need one, then they have flexible financing options, including 0 down, 0% interest. So taking care of your home with the pros at Valentine has never been easier. Schedule your free estimate by calling 206 Roofing. Again, call 206 Roofing. And please tell them that you heard about them right here on Undivided. Call 206 Roofing and schedule your free estimate today. All right, in some national news, but with a little bit of a local tie, guess who's going to be in Washington tomorrow? Tim Walz. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz coming to Washington.
Only place in the country he feels safe to come to is Washington State.
Can you think of and he's coming here to do a fundraiser for Bob.
Figures.
Bob Ferguson. Can you think of a lamer duo to listen to at a fundraiser than Tim Walz and Bob Ferguson?
That
It's
is.
annual December
I
luncheon.
can't.
Where was my invitation, by the way?
Right?
And it says the downtown Seattle location is private until 72 hours before the event for security reasons. So the timing of this is obviously very interesting because, of course, Tim Walz is wrapped up in this immense controversy right now that even the mainstream legacy news and the New York Times is catching on to, which is this multi-billion-dollar fraud perpetrated by Somalis in Minnesota. Some of that money being stolen from Minnesota taxpayers that was supposed to fund things like meals for kids, help kids who have autism, help to house the homeless. No, instead, $1 billion plus was being stolen from Minnesota taxpayers right under Tim Walz's nose, and some of it even was going to fund the terror group Al-Shabaab. So Tim Walz is in this period of time where he's under all this scrutiny for how this was able to happen, his unwillingness to take accountability for it, 78 now criminal defendants charged by the federal government. And Bob Ferguson, at a time when our state's budget is under scrutiny, is going to have him as the keynote speaker at his fundraising event? And I said this the other day on the show when I was talking about what's happening with the Somali fraud in Minnesota. It reminds me a lot of, I won't call it fraud, although it's looking fraud if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck. But we did that exclusive whistleblower report on the show at the end of October about a Washington State equity program, the Community Reinvestment Program, where taxpayer funds are being sent to nonprofits run by members of the Black community. And then that money was being spent to buy themselves and their family members homes, to pay off their own personal debt, to enrich the people who the funds were going to. And we know that that's currently under investigation by the Department of Commerce and by the Attorney General's office under Nick Brown. And the similarity that I drew there was that they're both programs involving people of color. And I do think that blue states have a significant issue, and maybe this is, I mean, they have so much in common, Tim Walz and Bob Ferguson. I do think blue states have significant issues with auditing, with accountability for programs that are run by people of color. I think that's why the Somali community was able to get away with it. And we even read the story last week where members of the Somali community basically had threatened that if there were people that were going to look into their finances, they would accuse them on the news of being racist. So you have these very ideologically driven leftists who are in charge of doling out this money, and they have inclinations that it's being misspent, but they can't say anything. No, because they're Black. We'll be accused of racism. We can't. I don't think that this would be allowed to happen. I don't think the Somali fraud would have become as big as it was if it wasn't the Somali community or a community of color that was at the center of it. And I don't think the Community Reinvestment Program funds would have been allowed to be abused in the way that they're being abused if it didn't involve people of color doling out the money. I truly believe that. And in fact, the fact that this program hasn't been put on pause yet in Washington State, the Community Reinvestment Program, the answer I got from Commerce was, well, that round of funding has basically all been spent. So, if they get another round of funding, maybe something would change, but the money's basically depleted. So it gives them time to continue to look into how the Community Reinvestment Program funds are being utilized. But, I think that if these were white organizations, it wouldn't even be a question. You'd be like, oh my God, you're spending millions of dollars giving yourselves money for houses and to pay debt and all this stuff. Like, yeah, the money stops today. And now they would come out publicly and saying, we're launching an investigation into this. But because it's a BIPOC group, they're like, oh, let's be really quiet about it. Now, something interesting has happened. So we did our whistleblower report end of October. We did a follow-up report, about a month ago. It's something we still continue to work on. So at the center of both of those reports was the Metropolitan Seattle, what is it called? Why is my mind blanking of the group in Seattle that we focused on? Urban League, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. And that's just because there was so much there. We just focused in on one group. So the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle was at the center of our expose about giving some of these community reinvestment funds to daughters, workers, friends, allies, etc. So Corey Orvold, our whistleblower, had recently pointed out that the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle was scheduled on December 12th to have their big annual event. And they had a major speaker, Michelle Obama, was going to be their keynote at their big annual event coming up December 12th. But last week, our whistleblower sent emails to Michelle Obama's team, letting them know about this ongoing investigation into the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. So this just came out yesterday. The Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle put out this statement. We have received word that Michelle Obama is no longer able to join us. Oh my God. I think that's because of our story. I think it's because of our story, and the whistleblower thought, hell, I'm going to let Michelle Obama's team know what's going on so she can decide whether she wants to be associated with this organization. I can't say for sure. They claim Michelle Obama is going to reschedule. But I don't know if that's a coincidence. A week before, not even a week before,
Right.
She's scheduled to be at this big ticket event. I'm sure she's already been paid. And now she's saying she can't come. And it just happens to be that she made that announcement a couple days after our whistleblower sent her an email with links to our story. I don't think that's a coincidence. So that gives me a little bit of a joy, actually. That gives me a tiny little bit of joy. All right, story out of Portland, wild. This is what happens when we convince, not we. This is what happens when a generation of people is convinced that words are violence. That words are the exact same as violence. That if you say something bad about me, it's the same as stabbing me in the back. So this is the headline from the New York Post. Black man acquitted of stabbing white man by Portland jury after victim said the N-word following the attack. Okay, wrap your mind around that. A black man was acquitted by a jury in Portland of stabbing a white dude. And the only defense given was that, oh, well, the white dude called him the N-word. After he was stabbed. So the jury was sympathetic enough with the black man because he got called the N-word that they said, yeah, stabbing is justified. Holy smokes. So now you can stab someone if they, well, he's claiming that he was called the N-word before the attack, but the actual capturing of the N-word was only after the attack. So there's some difference there. But either way, so you can stab someone if they call you the N-word? Wild. So a Portland, Oregon jury has cleared a black man of assault charges for stabbing a white man after it was revealed that the victim said the N-word after the attack. Gary Edwards, 43, was found not guilty of second-degree assault after knifing Gregory Howard on July 7th. Edwards admitted to stabbing Howard, but claimed it was in self-defense after the victim had used racial slurs. There is no audio on the video, but Edwards' defense attorney, Daniel Small, told the jury his client was approaching Howard to see if he would trade his knife for cigarettes. Police body camera footage captured Howard calling Edwards the N-word in the aftermath of the attack after cops rushed over to intervene. So the attack is captured on video, but there's no audio. So the black man claims, oh, I was just going up to him to see if he'd trade a knife for cigarettes. And the black man claims the white man called him the N-word before the attack, and that's why he stabbed him. But the only actual evidence of the white guy calling the black guy the N-word is after the attack. It says, police body camera footage captured Howard calling Edwards the N-word in the aftermath of the attack after cops rushed over to intervene. Howard claimed he only used the racial slur after being stabbed, but Edwards testified that the victim called him the word the moment he saw him. And the defense attorney for the black man said, what other than racism could explain why Mr. Howard perceived hatred, animosity, and aggression from a complete stranger? Well, I don't know. He's like a crackhead homeless dude. Those things happen all the time. But even if this white guy had said that word to him 100 times, it's not a defense for stabbing him. It's not a defense for trying to murder him. But the only evidence that he called him the N-word was after he was stabbed. And of course, I am not in favor of using the N-word. But if you called someone the N-word after they stabbed you with a knife, that's a much different situation. But a Portland jury, oh, words are violence. Words are violence. You called him the N-word, you deserve to be stabbed and almost killed. The world we're living in. It's absolutely wild. All right, we'll get to comments from the live stream. First, with talk of an AI bubble, are you concerned at all about the risk exposure of your retirement portfolio? I mean, the overvaluation of stocks right now is insane. AI has a lot to do with that. So are you concerned that your retirement portfolio is properly protected? If not, or you're not sure, reach out to our friend Zach Abraham with Bulwark Capital for advice on how to best protect your investments. The impact AI is having on the market is something he can talk to you about, also give you a preview of 2026. He can also discuss how critical Bulwark's deployment of value investing is to retirement portfolios and give you a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, and give your retirement as much upside as possible. So schedule your free Know Your Risk portfolio review and subscribe to Zach's daily market recap at knowyourriskpodcast.com. That's knowyourriskpodcast.com. All right, some comments from our live stream today on illegals and the fact that there is no type of immigration enforcement that Democrats would support under Trump. Christian says, you made such a great point about how the sanctuary laws are set up to protect the illegals by releasing them back, and it makes it unsafe for them, their family and friends, and especially ICE and DHS. Yeah, the sanctuary laws make it more likely that you're going to be caught up in some sort of immigration enforcement that's happening around you. And it makes it more dangerous for the community and for ICE agents. Because instead of getting someone out of the jail, you've got to get a strike team together, go out into the community, knock down a door. So it's less safe for the community. It's more disruptive for communities, and it's definitely less safe for ICE agents. Let's see. Lil Miss J, I think this is in relation to the story about the teacher saying she shouldn't have to teach the children of parents who don't agree with her politics and her gender identity. Lil Miss J, Brandi, and Nicole, you definitely started out the week with a banger crazy story. This week just might get more crazy from what we're seeing. Every week is crazy. Every single week is crazy these days. It really is.
Especially with schools around here. I mean, every week we get crazy school stories. So I don't know how anybody sends their kids off to school these days.
It really is wild. More on ICE, Moon Goddess. Unless they're willing to take responsibility for the illegals and have them stay at their house, politicians need to STFU. Shut up or put up. Mm-hmm. Well, and also, if your view really is that you are not in support of any sort of immigration enforcement, then come out and be honest about it and say, you know what, open borders. I think we should go back to open borders, and we should not have laws that allow people to be deported based on immigration status. They won't say that because obviously it sounds insane if you just come out and say it, but that is what you want. I mean, that's what everything you're saying suggests that you want. Otherwise, you wouldn't complain when they deport a criminal illegal alien, but you're complaining about all of it. Old Sub Sailor, Nick Brown is a total leftist droid, talking head, puppet with Ferguson's hands, moving his lips, if you get what I mean. Yeah, I mean, he's using Bob Ferguson's playbook, and I've said it a million times, wouldn't you? Bob Ferguson's playbook got him to the governor's office. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get to the governor's office, wouldn't you just use Bob Ferguson's playbook too? Because it seems to work for voters here. Let's see, Deborah Hibbs, that ICE facility has a medical clinic staffed 24 hours a day. I'm sure he received medical care. Yeah, the guy comes in with big lacerations from a dog. No, they just let him bleed out. Of course they gave him medical care.
They said in the story that he got stitches.
Right, what other medical care do you want?
They said, well, probably not quick enough.
Good God.
Okay.
That's really crazy.
Okay.
On the parks thing, Russell Morton says, Mayor Wilson will get this straightened out. Yeah. No, she won't. And you did put a laughing emoji, so I imagine that was sarcasm. Tracy, it's okay if poor families can't afford it because then the city will do another rich people tax to help pay the fee for poor families. Yeah, they'll say, oh, poor kids don't get any opportunities. They can't afford the fees to play on Little League. So we have to pass another tax to help them afford the fees when the fees are the result of the city of Seattle and the taxes and the misspending and all of that. Totally true. Let's see. On the no whites allowed at the Elf musical. Booney Williamson, this is so wild that it's even allowed to be advertised like that. In property management, when I got my real estate license, the laws were so strict about even using the word cozy in advertising, as that had been ruled illegal. So like if you're advertising like a cozy apartment, you can't say that because it's like, that's interesting. Even though this is not housing, how is it not illegal to advertise that an event is for anyone but white people? I mean, the Civil Rights Act and all. I agree. I don't know how it's legal, and I think we need to let the Department of Justice know about it.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, they don't. Yeah, you can't say master suite.
Maybe
anymore.
we should go. Maybe we should all buy tickets. No.
I am curious how many people show up for that show.
Hear me out. What day is that? What day is it at? The 10th. What are we doing on Friday?
Well,
no, the 10th isn't Friday. The 12th is Friday.
12th is Friday.
No, the 10th is Wednesday.
Oh.
I'm almost like, you guys should, if you're white and you have nothing to do, buy a ticket and see if they say anything to you. Because I don't think they can, but if they do, then we have like a civil rights case on our hands. Because they can't actually prohibit, they cannot stop you from going. And it says self-identified people of color. So you could say, like Rachel Dolezal, I self-identify as black and I'm going to see Elf the musical. If any of you feel like doing that, please let me know because I want to know what happens. Because I'm enthralled by it. Let's see. Yavelle, Morgan Freeman said it best. The best way to stop racism is to just stop talking about it. Yeah, but the government wants us to hate each other.
Right.
So he has a good point.
He does have a really good spiel on it. He has a whole good thing on racism.
Yeah. I love this from Tur about the ball fields. They had a homeowner in Olympia who built his own baseball field so his son's team had a place to practice. The city made him tear it out because it wasn't available to the public. What? I didn't hear about that. How could you do that if you wanted to build it on your own property? I'll have to look into that. I haven't heard that. So, all right.
Send us more info.
Just wild. Thank you, Nicole. And with that, let's get to our closing sanity check. So as you're hearing all these stories on President Trump and immigration and really anything the president is doing, it's important to just look at it under the guise of no matter who is sharing it, whether it's a mainstream media source or whether it's a United States senator, like in the case of Patty Murray, the chances are that they either didn't do their homework or didn't care enough to do their homework. Illinois Democrat Senator Tammy Duckworth was on CNN, and she was being asked about these strikes on the drug boats, which I have an opinion about those. I'm not particularly fond of them, but of course there was the controversy over the double tap, the strike, and then there were survivors or something, and so there's the allegation that they struck it again or whatever it is. And so Senator Tammy Duckworth has been all up in arms about this, but even CNN kind of caught her in a lie about how much homework she did or did not do about what actually happened.
Senator, have you seen the video?
I have seen the video. And it is deeply disturbing. I am mostly concerned with the fact that we are putting our American servicemen and women in jeopardy here. The fact of the matter is only Congress can decide that we can go to war, and there was no such declaration made.
I just want to make sure that that I get this accurate. You have seen the classified video of this particular strike, the first strike, and then the double tap as it's known.
No, I've just seen what's been available in the media.
Okay.
I've read the full report, but I've not seen the actual video.
So the part of the video, the crucial part of the video, the part of the video that's necessary to understand whether what she's claiming happened, she hasn't actually seen it. So you might have the title Senator in front of your name, but it doesn't mean that you know what you're talking about. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you. Big thank you to our newest paid subscribers. Great to have you on board. We're always trying to grow our paid subscriber base so we can continue to grow and expand the show. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber, you can sign up for just $5 a month. Go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. Click on the banner that says support the show for $5. Gosh, that's kind of it. We will see you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon.